Welcome to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundrum Motors, Ireland's favourite car buying website. With the widest selection of cars from certified trusted dealerships, most Irish drivers find their next car on Done Deal. Now, if it sounds any way different today, Paddy, I don't know if anyone will be able to know. First of all, we should do what car are we recording this week's podcast in?
What beautiful acoustics has this car that we're sitting in, actually. Yeah, it's an expensive car. It's one that we did mention in last week's pod as one that both of us agreed on we would probably have in its category. And I see it has a Bowers and Wilkins audio system.
It's a plug-in hybrid, so the engine is technically running, but it's not, and the aircon is on. And like a tractor unit of a truck is after driving by, and you can just about hear that.
It has 7 seats.
It does.
It's like a Scandinavian apartment in here.
It has a new kind of rose gold colour, which I believe is the new colour. I did a video on this facelift in Sweden last year. I'm just trying to remember all the bits. It's more on the outside, the differences, than the inside. The inside kind of stays the same.
And if you need to go back to last week's one, no one has ever been killed driving one of these.
Correct. And it's someone actually messaged us saying, I can't believe you didn't mention the electric version, which is the EX90. Well, that's good and all, but when you have the XC90, why would you need anything else?
No, I think this was supposed to be an EX90, was it?
Yes, this was meant to be. I got a phone call last week from Volvo, which often happens, and a car maybe hasn't arrived in the country yet, or whatever it is. Although I think there have been some delays with the EX90. Say nothing.
Well, we are in the same place for once, which is good. And
yes,
we are sitting in a very beautiful Volvo XC90. But we are sitting in what feels like the set of love-hate.
Well, that's not the car's fault.
No.
That's because we're sitting in JFK Industrial Estate, which sounds a lot more historical than it is. Like, are you allowed to do that? Can you name an estate after a former US president?
I guess you can do what you like, really.
Who was killed in service.
He's unlikely to be here ever. But
no.
You would imagine that if it became on the agenda of Trump coming over on his next Irish visit to honour JFK,
yeah,
he might go to Breda's Cafe. A shout out actually to Breda's Cafe. It is closed, but have you ever had a fry up here?
And you know, when I was waiting for you, I pulled into Goose Cafe on Knockmitten Road,
okay.
And that also, I thought it was closed down, but I saw a guy pulling the shutter down. I think all these places just, obviously lunchtime comes, it's now 3:20.
No, you could be here at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, and it would be hopping. And what a feed as well. Really, really nice feed. So yeah, shout out to Breda's Cafe.
How do you have such good knowledge of greasy spoons around
Well, again, friend of the show, Robert Guy, head of after sales for Volkswagen Group Ireland. He is who I would call a breakfast connoisseur. And he used to work in Mitsubishi around here a long time ago, and I think he just has a very sound knowledge of all of the best breakfast places, and he's right about this place. He brought me here one day when we were in Volkswagen. We had to cross from Liffey Valley to come over here to have the feed, but it's a place that gives you chips with your fry and all.
Ah, nice. Well,
cup of tea, people in high vis vests,
workers, the real people.
Yeah. And what a feed as well.
Well, shout out to Breda's, and also a good car park when it's not open. On the surface, we know what I'm driving this week now. I'm only in it. I've driven maybe 20 kilometres in it, but...
Executive summary, it's great.
It's great. If you have the means to buy a Volvo XC90, just go and buy one. And if you can't afford a new one, buy a used one. As long as it has a service history, I really wouldn't care.
And this is, it goes back to the point, again, we were talking about last week, about some of the Korean brands, when they change their car, it just radically changes, and then you look like a pauper in your 2-year-old one.
Yeah.
This is a brand new one, but it still has the essence and vibe of 10 years ago.
I'd go more. I think you could park this beside a 04 one and still have an idea of it's the same car.
Yeah, it's one of those cars I've toyed with. If you're brave enough, getting a 04, 05 one just as a bit of a thing to hack around. The bills are going to be ugly, but you're talking a few grand.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was only looking at, I'm not buying, but just out of curiosity, Porsche Cayennes and stuff. You can now get, sub €5,000 Cayennes, which, how much were they new?
140.
Like, that is going to be a big bill. But what if it's, you just get a good one?
That's it. That auction I was at in Newcastle the other week, they were like £1,500 for 4.2 litre V8.
It's a lot.
I mean, there's an awful lot to go wrong, and
Yeah.
the bills are going to be eye-watering. But as you said, and I think you said it the last time, if you got a month out of it, or two, or a summer out of it, and you know how bad, and you just
What? But you have to move it on. You don't want to scrap it.
well, no, you don't. But at least if you considered yourself renting it for 3 months and you charged yourself
Like,
whatever.
there is a guy, he has a YouTube channel in Ireland, and he just does videos on his 7 Series. And his car came up for sale on the Bangernomics thread on boards.ie a few months ago. And it is a 05 limousine version 7 Series.
Nice.
And he only wanted like $5,000 or something for it.
Were you 750 IL?
Was it a 50 or was it a 40? It could have been a 50. It had
The L was in a 50, I believe.
It must have been a 50 then. It had like the tray tables in the back of the seats, and like, what a car. And this guy had meticulously maintained it. He'd done videos on retrofitting this guy had turned off the soft closed doors because they just give too much trouble. Like, he was babying this thing. And I don't have space for these things, but you can really buy, whether it's an Audi A8, a 7 Series, an old S-Class, like
Yeah, I'd
4 or
be
5 grand.
I'd be a sort of a 0304 A8 kind of a fella.
Yeah,
4-litre TDI.
that was the one. I remember buying an A3 out of Grange Motors, and the guy was buying the car off his demo that he was running was the silver, it was titanium body, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or aluminium.
Aluminium. Titanium would be a little bit more expensive.
Silver, matching alloys, just twin exhaust pipes on the back.
That diesel one was an absolute beast.
Yeah.
So what's going on this week?
So quiet week for me because I'm not travelling, which is actually okay with me this week. I'm doing a little bit of radio work. You can hear me on Classic Hits Radio in the breakfast time, which the Classic Hits are actually bigger in Cork than they are in
They're
Dublin.
huge in Cork.
So much so that I know a lot of the DJs would love to have a studio in Cork. The owners maybe not so much because they have to pay.
Who owns Classic Hits?
A company called Bay Broadcasting,
Okay.
who are kind of, well, one of the last few Irish-owned radio groups in the country.
Because obviously you've got Red FM, who are the big boys down there.
Yeah, Red FM, you've got Cork
C103.
96 and C103, and then the same owners own Radio Nova in Dublin, and
But no Cork studio.
no Cork studio
It's a shame.
right now. I know from talking to Gareth O'Callaghan, who lives in Cork, and is a bit of a radio legend at this stage.
Oh, he is.
He gets the train. He does a Saturday morning show at 10 a.m. in Dublin, and he gets the train at like 3:30 or something from, what's the name of the station in Cork? Kent. And up he pops.
What we didn't talk about, although we mentioned it last week, was we didn't talk about the Bigster. You were going to do the Bigster.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the Bigster. The video's there now. Are we allowed to talk about the drive and all that yet?
We can talk about that now. The embargo lifted earlier on Thursday, so yeah. So you can ask me anything you like about the Bigster.
Well, is it any good?
Yes, it is. Any further questions? So we got there, and I was wondering how this is going to work. So there's many different powertrains. You've got different hybrids. You've got an LPG version. You've got a manual version. You've got a 4x4 version, and then you have the hybrid 155, which we had. It's in lots of ways like a new Duster inside in terms of switchgear. The dashboard, they have raised the dashboard up so you get more knee. Like, the dashboard is higher than in this XC90, for example. Idea gives you more knee and passenger space. Price is still not confirmed. I even think by the time this is going out, they won't.
What's your best guess? Educated guess?
Having literally been at a Renault event recently, because they're all the same company, with two senior guys in Renault, I looked at them and said, now guys, this car has to start with a 2, even if it's the entry level. And they both laughed and said, you mean the version no one buys? And kind of puffed their cheeks out and
Sharpie, take a breath.
they just said, well, it's good to know where you're thinking anyway. So, I mean, all the press cars that were there were the launch highest spec, of course, the one with the sunroof, the electric boot, all the rest of it. I'm only just guessing here, but look, if it is 38, 39 grand, it's still going to offer a lot of value compared to some of the other, more prestigious badges like a Volkswagen Tiguan. There's nothing really the Bigster, won't be able to do. But some people obviously just, they
Does
prefer.
it have the finish and the fit and finish of a decent spec Tiguan though?
No.
I mean,
But that's the point.
Yeah, but I guess I'm trying to position it in my head because it's not a cheap car. It's not it's I know we're not supposed to use the word cheap, but I had it in my head as okay, this is a cut price kind of Tonka toy. It's not quite that. It's just a slightly less expensive medium SUV.
C segment car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Have they missed a trick there?
In what sense?
Like, as in, like, is there an entry? Is the entry one really nice and Spartan, but chunky and big and cheap? We don't know. Really.
Don't know because they didn't have it there. So compared to the Opel Grandland I literally had last week, so that car starts at 39 grand. And yes, Opel may not be the most exciting brand in the world right now, but will it feel a bit nicer inside? Yes.
Right.
So, and that's my point with where the Bigster pricing, the only thing that car has to get right really is the price.
Yeah, and let's be real. They're definitely getting everything right. I mean, it's not like they've produced some bad cars recently. Their stuff is really working and selling.
Their CEO was at the launch. He didn't sit at our table for the dinner, but he was sitting with the guys from the UK, which I was slightly envious of because he is a very charismatic, not your normal CEO. Like, he was pushing some of the design guys out of the way in front of the projector screen just so everyone could see the car. He was like, let them see the car, move. And I said to him, you get to raise your hand and ask a question. They'd spoken about focus groups in Germany where they'd done a lot of research into the car, and they took 14 potential customers and they asked them, what are the big things you want in this type of car? And, they spoke about price and blah, 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 blah. And so I just came back because I always get asked about NCAP ratings in Dacias, and people will look at the rating and go, oh, that's not a safe car. It only has a 1 star, or it only has a 2 star. And on the surface, you could understand why people would feel that. But when you go into the NCAP report, and I'm not saying pedestrians are, less important than drivers, but I do think to a certain point, if you hit somebody in any type of car, they're not going to necessarily dust themselves off and come away from it.
It's going to hurt.
But that can be one of the reasons why these cars, or they don't have lane keep assist, or they don't have blind spot, and they will lose points for this. And I said to him, I said, hello, Mr. CEO, you mentioned the research of 400 Germans. How on the priority list, how high was safety, and this car hasn't been tested yet for NCAP, but what would you be happy with, 3 star, 4 star? Because he'd gone on record recently to say that Dacia are not chasing NCAPs. They cost too much. It's not what they're about.
Yeah, I read that at the time. I think the controversy at the time was around the Jogger, and in particular there was uproar that it had got a 1 star result, and I think they'd based the score on something else. I'm not sure they'd even tested the car at the time.
It's based on a Clio chassis, and it's
and you're right. It's and for anyone kind of going, oh, I'm not sure I could necessarily go and buy one. A lot of the features that NCAP look for now are some of the active safety, some of the really high-end technological pieces, which it's not that you don't need them, but they're additional to, you getting out of the car alive. A lot of them might prevent you getting into the accident in the first place or help with that.
Yeah.
It's not that these cars are unsafe, right?
Exactly. And he said, can I just get a show of hands there, no judgment, who turned off lane keep assist as soon as they got into the Bigster to drive today? And I and many others had said, yeah, we did. And what's the first thing I do is I turn off the speed notification when I get into a car. Although in Volvo, they make it very hard, as they would, to I don't even know where it is. So I have been driving this. But yeah, I mean, it's not like it's saying, okay, there's no seatbelts in this car, or it hasn't got airbags. And actually, take the Spring, for example. It is a small car. You do feel quite vulnerable in any sort of small car, but the Bigster doesn't give you that sense of, you're high up off the ground, it's bulky, it's not huge, but you feel like it would take a whack, so to speak.
I always think you have to put these things in context as well. I mean, if you're driving that, or driving a Spring, or you're driving a Jogger, compared to a 10-year-old anything,
yeah,
and it's infinitely safer.
Yeah,
so there was the changes come to the test, but at the same time, I think if you asked customers, would they prefer a certain amount of safety that means they're they're going to be reasonably safe.
Yeah.
Or they'd like lower prices, and I think they'll probably go for lower prices.
That's it, and they will, and people will vote for that. But that's just where they really have to get this right. When you have things like Grandland, not that again, it's not the most exciting car in the world, but people will just perceive Opel as a better badge than a Dacia. So that's where it has to be price wise. But like a smooth car to drive, it was in hybrid mode a huge proportion of the time. Lot of space in the rear, good size boot. I did manage to so they have this plastic housing over the arches and some of the bumpers, and they call it Starkle, which is Dacia's way of using recycled plastics. And they don't put black high gloss over wheel arches and stuff because they say it'll get marked. It's more expensive. You use more paint to do that, so it pushes up the cost of the car. So you get this starkle effect. So you don't really notice it until you go up close. When you do go up close, it looks like someone's been painting near your car on a windy day. It's all these flecks, right? So it has front and rear cameras, but they're not the best. Now, I'm not blaming the equipment here. The clarity of the screen, it's not as good as the screen here in the Volvo, right? But I was manoeuvring the Bigster in the vineyard where I was filming. And I was aware of kind of sort of 2 foot high rocks that were kind of just marking out a path. And let's just say I didn't see one of them. And I heard this loud scrape in this brand new Bigster. And there's a couple walking to the vineyard because you can walk around this hotel. And they both heard the noise and turned around immediately with this kind of these shocked faces.
You had that oh shit moment.
I was having that oh shit moment, not really reacting, being like, oh, nothing to see here. This is normal. So I waited until they left and I jumped out of the car to see, how had I caught the entire front of the car. And what I had done was the Starkle kind of skid pan, whatever, underneath the car had caught a little bit of rock connection.
Okay.
But it does what it says, because the whole point of the Starkle stuff is meant to be, if you get a rub in a car park, you won't see it as easily. And I can testify for this. I can vouch.
So it was basically just good journalism.
Yeah, I was or bad manoeuvring. But if you see Starkle on your car, it's a good thing.
So look, when's it coming? Price, we don't know, but
price we don't know. I'd imagine it's going to be a July car at this stage. We're not far off April now, so yeah, around that kind of time. But look, do you know what? If you thought there was a lot of cars last year, it ain't slowing down.
No.
We're just back from the Renault 5 launch. They gave us a sneaky preview with the Renault 4. You'll start to see people will be able to test drive the Renault 5 now in dealerships from this week. So I'd expect to see more of them. The highest price is 33 grand. Every one of them comes with a heat pump as standard. We'll actually be getting more from an expert very soon on the podcast.
I was on the website the other day, sort of configuring as you do.
Oh, were you?
I'm dying to see their entry one. Have you seen on their website, they have steel wheels on the entry. I would love to know what it looks like in real life. No one will buy that car. They probably won't even offer it.
It's that's the one that's 26, just under 26 grand.
But does it actually physically exist anywhere?
In general terms, Renault don't always sell the entry version in Ireland. I think with this car they will, though. And also, I don't want to give away too many secrets because we'll be talking to Jeremy Warnock from Renault Ireland, who's their product expert, I suppose. He's figured out a quirk that the French do not allow you order a certain colour on the Renault 5 exterior with a certain colour interior.
Ah, okay.
And for that reason, he'd go for the mid-spec version. So
they had the 5 there, which is obviously coming out. They had the 4.
4 was there, which it really has managed to eclipse a snapshot of the original car. Like the curves on it, obviously that's to have it's got a totally digital face, for want of a better description. It's all a big light bar cross. So it has first time the Renault have put an illuminated Renault badge on a car. But in order to have an illuminated badge on a car, EU regs say you have to have a full width across the front surround also lit up. I don't know why, but it looks well. But the curved nose, the kind of bulbous rear on the original Renault 4, it's all in this car. They obviously don't have the gear shifter in the dashboard, which, did you know, was just a hook? It was a hook around another stick in the engine bay that was changing the gear.
I do remember I remember my dad, who was a motoring journalist for the Sunday Independent a long time ago. I remember him.
A legendary motoring
Yeah, he
journalist,
was.
has
He
to
was
be
a
said.
good one. He picked me up from Bettystown Tennis Club. I'm going to say around 1987 or 8 in a brand new. No, it must have been later. Sorry, it was 1990 in a brand new yellow Renault 4 press car, and I was just like completely mortified. But they were still knocking around at that stage.
Yeah, they were, and I actually said to the people today at Renault, I said the Renault 4 it was kind of Renault's 2CV, wasn't it? And they were like, yes, but it was better. And I said, how was it better? And they were like, well, the cooling effect on the Renault on the 2CV only happened above 80 kilometers an hour. So you could bring the Renault 4 to the Sahara because it was liquid cooled, and they were the two reasons that, in their opinion, it means it was a better car.
But I remember that gear stick on the dashboard. That's a memory that sticks out. But they were also on Pust vans.
They were on Post Vans and Telecom
Telecom
Air.
Éireann, yeah.
Yeah, they probably did lots of fleet numbers for Renault sales. And when you drive in France and Morocco and places like that, you still see them. And 2CVs.
So look, I know we're going to hear from Jeremy shortly, but look, give us a lowdown on the 5 price-wise, 25-ish starting off.
26 starting off. You've got 3 different trim levels. The highest price is still low 30s. There's a pop-up store in Dundrum Town Centre. If you want to go and have a look, you can. It's a cool idea. You can go in, you can buy a hoodie, you can play foosball, you can look around at the car.
Did they give you any indication on supply for these things?
They're hoping to get 500. There's 100 pre-orders. They're hoping to get 500 this year, according to Seamus, who's the boss of Nissan and now Renault, and I suppose technically Dacia as well in Ireland. They're just wondering, will they get the supply?
Doesn't sound like enough.
It feels like they will want more, but also...
But do they want to leave them wanting more?
Better off looking at them. Well, in this case, not looking at them than looking for them.
It's that balancing act because residual values in EVs haven't been spectacular. This is a car people are going to want and going to love. If they get just enough to keep supply going and not to annoy too many customers, there'll be no discounts and values will remain high. But if they, I think that'll be a car that'll be in demand for 2 or 3 years.
I think so. So at the end of today's episode, you will hear from Jeremy Warnock, who is a super guy. He loves cars.
A proper petrol head.
Yeah, and he really knows the stuff. And it's a guy who he's just one of those people that you don't have to do a day's work because your work is your passion. That's the kind of guy that he is.
I'm just out of the Skoda Octavia RS. And yeah, my video on TikTok there, Car Talk Ireland, is doing pretty well, but it's having a lot of controversy.
Why?
Just a lot of anger about the fact that it's not diesel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So people are getting annoyed that there's a front-wheel drive petrol car, but not a diesel option.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the comments I get on the channel are there's some real diesel lovers there.
Yeah.
And yeah, just angry that the thing is not a diesel anymore, even though that was never the point of the RS. That was the original one, was a 1.8 turbocharged.
Yeah, only drove that car again last year in the Isle of Man. Yeah,
the first one was 180 horsepower, one out of the TT.
Yeah, a lot of police forces around Europe used it. It was just over 1,300 kilos. Wow. It was a manual box, and it was a bloody crack. And I'd forgotten, to be honest. I didn't probably appreciate these cars when they were new because I was only a young fella, and to me it was like, well, it's a family car. But now, with the passage of time, it is a great little car, just nicely balanced. And yeah, I mean, look, your diesel. I drove the Mark II diesel RS then as well, and it was night and day. The difference. I've
had a few. I mean, when I worked in Volkswagen Group Ireland, it was a regular staff car for me. My first car when I joined the company from being a motor journalist was a white Octavia RS Estate.
Nice.
And that would have been the Mark II.
Yeah.
And then I had a black Estate, the later version. But they were outstanding for cars that just did everything you could possibly need. Now, I always had an Estate because why would you not?
Yeah.
But an interesting thing struck me though from this one, and well, it's really just about the price. I mean, the prices have gone crazy for everything, but it's the one I had was go to 60 grand.
Yeah.
And now you can have a Cooper Leon. We were talking about this before. Cooper Leon VZ, 300 horsepower, is €58,000. But within the Volkswagen Group itself, if you're not an EV hater, you can have the ID3 GTX Performance Plus
326 brake
for €39,000.
You don't put a fancy paint colour on it, yeah.
Yeah, if you want 40 grand, 41, and you've got everything you can possibly think of.
Which is $5,000 dearer than a Mark V Golf GTI was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I have a figure in my head, and I didn't look it up, but I have a figure in my head that not so long ago, the Octavia RS was €25,000 or €6,000.
When was that though?
Oh, it's a while back.
Yeah.
But as in within living memory.
No, I think the amount of stuff you get on an Octavia RS these days warrants more than that. But it is, I mean, it's no longer, it's the same price as a Golf GTI essentially. So it's no longer the slightly more affordable hot hatch version of a GTI. It's the same price.
But that was the thing. The Octavia RS was the bargain performance car.
Yeah, now it's not.
And now it's not. And look, Skoda would probably argue, okay, well, Skoda is not the bargain basement brand it was in the days of Felicia and the like. This is now if it's a premium or mainstream premium brand. So, and the Octavia RS does something that the Golf GTI probably doesn't. It is a slightly more useful family car. It's more of a blend between something that you can pootle around and do the shopping in, and if you need to blow off a little bit of steam, you can do that as well.
It's not quite as nimble because of the
it's not
versus the.
No, it's not. But it's still what would you have of that sort of triumvirate or more of models? GTI, Leon, Octavia. What would you have?
I think I would probably always go to the Golf GTI. I've had 3 of them in my own life. I had them as dinky cars growing up, and to me they're just in some ways the OG. Not always. Like I remember I had a friend who had an Astra OPC and I had a Mark V GTI, and in a straight line he would eat that car all the time. But it was torque steering like a but so the GTI wasn't always, especially in latter years, wasn't always the fastest, wasn't always the best handling, but it just had a bit of everything.
It just was. There's a bit of Goldilocks' porridge about the GTI. Yeah, everything was just right.
I miss the fact that you can buy a 2-door version.
Yeah,
I always had 2 doors.
I did have a fondness for the Octavia RS diesel estate. The last one they did was a lovely all rounder. But yeah, I think I would still go manual Mark 7 GTI, just tungsten silver, no options, manual gearbox.
Do you know what? If we're talking where money doesn't really matter, I'd happily get into a black Mark 5 with the 18-inch alloys, the cream beige leather, because that had the heated winter pack. Wouldn't really fancy your DSG, but probably with that leather combo, you'd probably find someone would have spec'd DSG and not manual. I still remember, I went from an Audi A3 2-litre TDI 140 brake to the Mark V GTI. No extras, just the wheels. Everything else was standard. And I remember got it in September 2005, and I'd had a Mark IV GTI 2 years previous, and it was just so different, and it was so much fun, and it sounded good, and it looked good, and it was again a bit like maybe VW are going through now. It was a little bit of a wake up moment for them, and that's sometimes where VW come back strongest, when they've had a bit of a kicking, when they've had a bit of a lesson, and then something comes out. Like the new ID4, I would say, will be absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, I've heard rumors that it will be, but yeah, with the hot hatch thing, do you think? And this is what I'm curious about in the short term: are the EVs going to give you that visceral feeling that we're starting to see, that we know and loved from GTIs and the like? Do you think that's going to happen?
I think with cars like the Renault 5 and more in particular the Alpine 290 and maybe the Alfa Junior Veloce, and I will be asking Jeremy a bit about this later on in the podcast, they're offering maybe different things. Like, yes, the engine note is gone, but that is not to say, whether it's limited slips, better suspensions, better brakes, they can put all those things into an EV hatch version of a hot hatch. It can still be front wheel drive. It can still have lots of power. It can still have, really cool bucket seats. It can still have red strips on the front, or in the Renault's case, all around the roof. It can still have class wheels. I think we maybe need to adjust our expectation of an engine sound, but maybe that's about it. Look at the Ioniq 5N.
Yeah,
That is an amazing car.
that's a proper performance car.
Amazing. Too much power.
Yeah, I think maybe we just get a little bit misty-eyed about some of these.
do.
And
We
we need to bring ourselves back to the future, really, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, that's the way it's going. But I do think, I think we've more chance of actual hot hatches existing now because of electrification. Because if it was just to be petrol and emissions
They'd
based,
have died a
they'll
death.
die.
Coming up after the break, what are we doing?
We're talking to a lady who is a marketing executive in one of the most successful automotive brands. Well, not just in Ireland, but especially in Ireland.
Yeah, we are talking to Zoe Bradley, who is in charge of marketing for Toyota, who are, a brand so synonymous with Ireland and who've been, in and around number one for a long time. And, certainly their cars, there's so many of their cars in the top 10 this year. So we're keen to talk to Zoe, find out what it's like working in that brand and also the secrets to their success. Join us after the break. Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundrum Motors, Ireland's favourite website for car buying. With more certified trusted dealers than anyone else, you're sure to find the right car for you on dundeal.ie. Hello, Mark.
Hello. Hello, Paddy. So we've moved from the salubrious surroundings of a Volvo XC90 plug-in hybrid, and Volvo doesn't exist in the room we're in now, or the building, I should say. Two fine brands do, however. It's the home of Toyota and Lexus. But we're here to talk to Toyota today, in the form of Zoe Bradley, who is the marketing. It's marketing, but what's the like? Sometimes you're marketing directors, sometimes you're marketing executives, sometimes the head of marketing. What's your title?
I have a lovely long title. It's Head of Marketing, Communications and Corporate Affairs.
Wow, wow.
Oh, the corporate affairs bit is good. I like that bit. That's my area where you if stuff goes wrong, that's what it generally means. If the proverbial hits the fan, that's what the corporate affairs means.
Yeah, but stuff doesn't go wrong, Paddy. It's a Toyota, so generally speaking, anyway. So welcome to the podcast. First of all, thank you for joining us. I know it's kind of a cliche question, but we've asked all our guests so far. Just give us a quick overview of your career. Where did it start? Have you always worked in automotive? And that kind of stuff.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here. So my career, I suppose getting here was a bit convoluted. I started off in law actually in UCC. And then I did a master's in law, and then I decided law was not for me. So I went into advertising. So I worked in Ireland for a few years in Dublin, and then I moved to Sydney, also in advertising. And then I came back to Dublin, and I was looking for a marketing role. And at the time, Toyota came up, and I hadn't really worked in the automotive industry before, but it's a really big brand, very well liked. I thought it would be interesting and something new. So I really bought into it, and I've been here actually nearly 9 years now. And I can say like every single year has been different, a lot of different challenges, but I think it was a great step to move in here.
On the note, actually, what's Toyota like to work in? Because I've been in a lucky position of being away with yourself and a lot of your colleagues, and it always strikes me that you guys are always back from, and I'm sure there is lots of hard work as well, but you're always just back from a trip in Paris or down in Kerry or whatever. It seems like Toyota Ireland really look after their staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kerry, obviously the most glamorous place you could ever go to, of course. I think that's one thing I really like about the role here is that we do a lot of different stuff. So I suppose predominantly I work in marketing and comms and the corporate affairs as well. And across the board, we work across the TV, advertising, product launches. As you said, we get to go on those really great PR trips and get to go to really nice places and drive nice cars. Last year we had our Paralympics sponsorship, which meant we went over and back to Paris quite a bit. So there's a lot of travel, but it's always very enjoyable. And yeah, Toyota is very, very good. You can really see it in the longevity of the staff here. And I think everyone really enjoys working. It's a very, very warm place to work, and probably one of the friendliest places I've ever worked.
I feel almost dumb asking the question because we're way beyond it now about women in the car industry. It's But look, we're still at a stage where it tends to be an industry which draws in more males. For you, from your experience, were you daunted getting into it at the start? Was there any apprehension? And I suppose as well, the second part of that would be, what advice would you give to someone, in particular female, who was coming into the industry and was a little bit apprehensive about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a great question. It's still male dominated. Like, I've definitely noticed in the last 9 years or so, there has been a change. There's more women who are dealer principals, who are working in sales and tech. We've got a great apprenticeship program, and the surrounding roles as well, like marketing, IT, service, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I was actually thinking about this. So when I first joined Toyota, I didn't think at all about that. It just didn't really cross my mind. But I have definitely found it to be very, very welcoming. Like I said, it's a different industry. I do think everyone in the industry really wants a better gender balance. So there's a huge amount of support around it. Everyone is conscious of it and wants to make it a really great place to work. And I think that's across the board in the industry. That's what I've noticed. So for, say, women who are probably not thinking about the car industry, but, might be thinking about it, I definitely say go for it. There's so many different ways in. There's, I think there's this perception or preconception that if you want to work in the car industry, you have to really love, how cars work. They're incredibly technical and sophisticated machines now. So, you have to be very technical to understand it all. But actually, a car is so much more to people. It's transport, it's independence, it's safety, it's comfort. And a car means so much to many people. And women are, about 50% of our customers. Women are so influential in decision making. So yeah, I would definitely encourage any woman who's thinking about it to get stuck in and give it a go.
I remember you and I speaking before on the AA Ireland podcast a couple of years ago, and it was a special issue that we did, and about women in the car industry in Ireland. And I remember us talking about the dealerships in particular. Are you finding there's more women coming into sales and more women coming into the after sales side of the business?
Yeah, definitely. So last year, actually, one of the trips we did was with salespeople, and there's more women involved, and you see it when we do kind of bigger events, like when we have salespeople on site, and we hear it from our dealers. And the more women that get involved, the more women that will be involved. So I think I remember that conversation, and we were saying at the time there was a campaign, and it was, if you can't see her, you can't be her. But now I definitely think we are getting to the point that you see many more women in the car industry, which will hopefully encourage more to come in.
Now, we've got to go back, I think, before all our times here, guys, because we're all still relatively young. But Toyota in Ireland were a product that appeared on Irish roads in the 70s. And I mean, there's huge heritage there. But I mean, I think Irish people would nearly think Toyotas are built here at this stage, but they're definitely not.
They were assembled here.
They
were, yeah. And I've no doubt that the range of what was available then is well, it's far superior in terms of the amount of models that Toyota now have in 2025. But what is it that has just like when you look at the top 10 figures of any sales period, it's usually the top five of the top 10 are Toyota products. What is it about Toyota that Irish people love?
So I suppose you mentioned that we started in the 1970s, and in 2023 we did celebrate our 50th year in Ireland, which was a huge milestone. And as part of that, we kind of looked back at Toyota through the ages, because when it first came into Ireland, it would have been this really small, unknown Japanese brand, which is kind of hard to fathom now. But at the time, I think what really set it apart was the price of the cars, its reliability, and its fuel efficiency. So that was key for the founding in the Irish market. And then following on from that, there was, I suppose, a huge focus on advertising and really creating an Irish brand for Toyota. So they did a lot of ads as Gaeilge. So one of the better known ads was on Ball Atá Mall San Toyota, and that was basically the fuel gauge, which is the slowest moving part of the Toyota. So again, it was really focused on Ireland. It's a 100% owned Irish owned company, and still is. And then we've had a lot of really great sponsorships as well, which I think really have embedded it in Irish communities as well. So we had, the Munster rugby sponsorship. You still see the jerseys around the place. We still have Paul O'Connell as an ambassador. We had Dublin GAA, we had the Special Olympics, we had the Paralympics most recently. So I think that really helped, when we look, at today in the last few years, we are the best-selling car brand for the 5th year in a row. I think a large part of that is due to, our dealer network, which would be the core of what we do, very much community-based. There's a huge amount of trust in the brand, and I think a huge amount of that comes through the dealer network and how we focus on our customers. Everything is customer first. And I guess in the last 5 years, we've had a lot of focus in terms of product on multipath, which would be hybrid, plug-in hybrid and electric. And that strategy is really working.
A lot of car brands will always talk about conquest sales and how, they launch a new model, whatever, and 50% are, from other people. I'd imagine it's nearly the opposite in Toyota. Have you any research in the sense of, once you get a customer, how likely are they to stay with the brand?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of retention, the retention figures are very, very high. And we did some focus group research about 2 years ago, and what came across was we were kind of looking at why people buy cars, but the people who own the Toyotas, there was a lot of love for the brand. So they would just openly say, I love my car, I love going to the dealership. So it's a very emotional connection, I would say. So yeah, our retention levels are very, very high.
I know Ireland is a small country, and you can only be number one in the market you're in. But surely the Japanese market or headquarters must pay attention to what you guys are doing, and do they pay particular focus to how you have managed to do so well over the past few decades?
Yeah, so Japan absolutely does. So any market that is number one in the country would always get a special focus. And how Toyota work is they like to get independent feedback from all the different markets. So the on the ground feedback, and then bring it into their own research and particularly their product strategy and things like that. Of course, they're looking at all these different regions, not just Ireland. But the good thing is that I suppose Toyota's strategy has always been customer first, then dealer, then distributor, and then global. And that's how they look at everything. So insights from the country, particularly countries that are doing very well, is always valued and always appreciated.
When you think of the term self-charging hybrid, that's a terminology Toyota have owned in the last couple of years, sometimes to criticism in certain markets, because it was essentially that the petrol engine was topping up a battery. But sitting in Toyota, whether it's in Ireland or HQ in 2025, when you look at EV sales, particularly in Europe, you could have to get the sense that maybe Toyota knew something a lot of us didn't. Was that just pure luck, or what? Toyota definitely hesitated? They are definitely in the electric space now, but there was a kind of a holding off period.
So that's been a kind of topic of conversation definitely for the last few years, and the narrative has changed in the last few years as well. When Toyota globally are looking at products, they don't just look at the next 10 years, it's the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Of course, I don't know what those plans are. But I do remember that particularly when, I suppose, there was a lot of commentary around electric cars and why didn't Toyota have electric cars. A lot of what Toyota was saying then, we still say now. So I suppose if you go to the core problem, it's carbon. So we need to reduce carbon. So how do we do that? So electric cars are great because they have zero tailpipe emissions. But what about the people who don't have access to a charger? Or, Toyota globally are looking at lots of different regions which have much less access to chargers. What about people who live in apartments? Surely they should want to reduce their carbon. Okay, they can do that through hybrids. Okay, what about the people who want to drive electric during the week but have longer journeys in the weekend? Okay, plug-in hybrids. So that's where the multipath strategy really was born from. Toyota always does its own analysis and kind of doesn't really look at what everyone else is saying, looks at the customer. It's very fact-based and takes quite a long time to do that analysis, which is why sometimes Toyota has been called slow or not agile enough. But it's a lot of deep thinking, looking at the research and then making a plan and executing it. And I think that's what they did back when a lot of other brands may have been jumping into electric. They just said, no, we don't believe it will be where it's going to be in 5 years. We believe it will take longer. So it's really just based on the facts and the research. So it's great to see that has been that's been the case, and we can be confident in future plans as well.
Because when so many brands have bet the farm on EV being a success and have got themselves in proper trouble as a result, if you look across Europe in particular.
But maybe didn't have the choice. I mean, like Toyota is one of the most valuable automotive companies in the world, and certainly Europe, it's a huge market for them, but it's like they have other markets. So I just wonder, is that as well? They weren't maybe as gun to the head as VW or whoever.
Yeah, well, in particular, they were able to pull out of diesel very quickly, and then it wasn't a case of, okay, the opposite of diesel is electric. They were able to carve their own path, and I think it's really paid off.
Although there are anecdotal stories, Zoe, of in previous years farmers at the National Ploughing Championships going up to staff and Lexus staff, asking them, have they got any diesel models? Which was, I think, the first couple of times quite funny, but after 2 days of rain and the same question.
I was at that plough. It was very rainy and there was a lot of talk about diesel. Yeah, again, because I remember when I started in 2016, we had really started focusing on hybrid, but people didn't really want hybrid at the time. So it was definitely, we were probably seen to be going against the market then. And to your point about moving out of diesel, we were able to do that because we'd started hybrid in 1997. So I would say back in 1997, those Toyota execs were thinking, what's going to happen in 30 years? And kind of made their plans based on that. But definitely, like, hybrid is, it's the second most popular powertrain now. But when we were really talking about it in 2016, people didn't believe that either.
It's a very exciting time for the brand. Currently, obviously the range is quite big, but there's a raft of new models coming. Can you talk us through some of the ones we can expect to see?
Yeah, so I suppose we're talking a lot about electric cars, and we had our Toyota Kenshiki event a couple of weeks ago. So Kenshiki is Insights, and 3 cars were shown at it. So the really exciting Toyota CHR Plus will be the big one, and an updated BZ4X and Urban Cruiser. There'll be more for next year, and then also there will be 3 more cars announced for 2026. But the CHR Plus model is really exciting. It's developed on the battery platform, so it still has the same battery quality, so up to 10 years or 1 million kilometers. So
is the CHR Plus bigger than the standard CHR that everyone knows? What's the Plus refer to?
The Plus is basically the additional electric features, or that it's an electric car. So yeah, it's built on the electric platform, but say the style, the driving dynamics is all part of the CHR family. It will have about 600 kilometers range, and we'll be launching it at around Q4 in October of this year. So definitely, we say to customers, you can register online if you're interested. We'll be releasing more news as it comes.
Another really exciting car, and I was very lucky to drive in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco last year, was the new Land Cruiser, which is a phenomenal piece of kit. Doesn't need any introductions. Probably has more gadgets now than it ever did. I didn't know until the trip. Ireland is the biggest market in Europe for commercial vehicle Land Cruisers. Did you know that, Paddy? So I don't know. It's because of our equestrian background, farming? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, it is farming. I know it's a great stat, but Irish people love Land Cruisers.
Yeah.
It's a great car, and that looked like a great trip. But yeah, no, we still see the same people. It's a lot of farming, construction who are looking for the Land Cruisers. It's been a long time coming.
I live in rural East Cork now, and they are everywhere. I mean, everywhere. From 94, 95 models right up to modern, day ones. It's just, for farmers, it's just the default choice because it has the duality. And I think obviously the new one is very fancy, but it has the duality of, you can wash it, scrub it up. It still looks pretty good. You could rock up to a reasonably nice place in it and it'll still go across a muddy field and pull a horse box or a trailer full of cows.
Yeah, I mean, like in the Atlas Mountains, I've done 2 trips there, and one you can stick to the roads if you like, but this Toyota trip wasn't. It was navigating rocks and many different things. But look, like a lot of cars, it's in a slightly different price point now. The passenger version, due to emissions, it's borderline 140,000 euro for the passenger. It was always we were never a passenger Land Cruiser country.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial vehicle version now will start from about 70,000 euro. Does that mean the the customer for Land Cruiser will change? Will they need to be wealthier, or like can dealer finances bridge that gap, or how does that work?
Yeah, so actually we brought it to the plough last year, and it was the first time we'd unveiled it in Ireland, and there was huge crowds surrounding it the entire time, as you can imagine. But yeah, no, we would have put out the pricing around then, and people were happy with it. I think this car is vastly different to the previous one. There's a lot more specs. It kind of drives more like a car. It's got your electric steering. You've got your bigger 9-inch display. You've got your heated seats, your parking sensors, 8-speed automatic transmission. So it's a lot more and a lot more safety features. But dealer feedback and customer feedback has been quite good, and we're still seeing those same customers coming back in actually. And they're happy with the price, and they're happy with the value that they're getting in the price. We actually have hundreds of orders in already, which is really promising as well. And funny enough, Paddy, you mentioned in East Cork and people driving their Land Cruisers, so there's so much at home in Kerry as well. But what I've heard anecdotally now is people are holding on to their old Land Cruisers and buying the new one as well because they want both. So yeah, look, the
Very
feedback has
wealthy
been
down in
good.
Cork and Kerry, lads. But and look, I do want to say, I mean, yes, the passenger one is a substantial increase in the last model. There's a substantial increase in what it can do, and I would say that maybe people who would have bought a Land Rover in the past or a Range Rover could now. It may, to some, it may not have the same prestigious badge, but I think it would offer a lot of the same things, and a lot of people would say the Toyota will keep going for quite a while longer compared to some of the competition. So again, if you have those means, I would definitely look at it. But yeah, it's the price does kind of shock people when they hear about it. Would something like a plug-in hybrid help that car in Ireland, do you think, or is there any demand for it? Or
I think, yeah. So I think, look, we'd always be open to other powertrains for the Land Cruiser. It's such a legendary model here, and people love it. At the moment, there's no plans for that, but you know, we never know. In the next couple of years, we'd love to look at something that's more electrified.
Speaking of electric, obviously you'd mentioned lots of new EVs coming. From the customer point of view, from your own brand point of view, do you think it's now the right time for EVs into the market? Were we a little bit early previously? And what's the appetite for the customer that you're hearing from the showrooms?
Yeah, so I think there's, you know, you can see it even in the stats, that increase in the electric segment. It's gone up again this year, which is really good to see. I suppose from our own customer base, we do still see a huge demand for hybrid. And now following on from that for plug-in hybrid, and then for us electric cars. So we're different to other brands, you know, in terms of our product lineup. I think now is a good time for us to be bringing out new electric cars into the market because the appetite is there, and I think people who are looking at electric now are very they're more aware of what you need to be thinking about, because, you know, when you buy an electric car, it's not just a new car, it's nearly like a new ecosystem. You have to get your head around the charging and how the temperature affects that. And I think the customers who are coming in looking for electric cars now are really aware of that, and they understand that the electric car is slightly different to, you know, a normal car, and you have to treat it differently. So I think it is the right time for people to start moving towards electric if they have, I think, really it's the home charging that people need to be able to get access for the electric car to make it work.
what has been your own experience of electric?
Yeah, like so we have our BZ4X here, and I've taken it for a few weeks and I love it. Like the drive is amazing. I'm actually currently in a plug-in, and that would definitely be my favorite because, like I said, I'm from Kerry, so I can charge it here. I drive in and out to work on completely on electric, but I can go home to Kerry and I don't have to worry about adding on a long kind of break on the way. But look, electric driving is great. It feels great. It's very comfortable. It's very quiet. So I do think that people who go into electric really like it. I think a lot of people do want that backup of having a petrol engine as well. And then say for myself, actually, where I live, it's in an apartment, so I wouldn't be able to get charging in for probably many more years. So you definitely need to have the options.
Options, yeah, exactly. For people who don't know, Zoe, you're a very well-travelled lady. Have you ever seen a very old Toyota in a random part of the world and it's brought a smile to your face?
Gosh, I've definitely seen a couple of very, very old Corollas. That was in Spain, actually. very
Okay, not too far
randomly,
away.
yeah. And I was in Australia a couple of Christmases ago, and I saw they're not very old, but they're CHRs, but they are in really great, vibrant colours, and that's something I'd love to see more in Ireland. More vibrant colours.
Why are we so obsessed with blacks and greys?
I don't know. Is it the weather? Can't blame everything on the weather,
Resale
though.
value from previous experience, it's people are scared of the yellows and the others because
Yeah.
the resale value doesn't hold up necessarily. That's the theory anyway. But yeah, if you look at the figures, it's just all black and silver and grey. Now grey has been number one for years on the sales.
Black I kind of get, because black is it's like a little black dress. It's classic. It never will go out of fashion.
Yeah.
But and it does take a lot of effort to keep it clean in this country. But as you say, like you nearly maybe need an ad, not just you, but any brands to say, buy the bright colours. The resale will
Yeah.
be fine, because as you say, you do see it in the continent and stuff like that. Has the way you're in Toyota now nearly a decade, has the way you market and advertise cars, has the message had to change?
I would say our messaging has, broadly speaking, been quite consistent. So for more brand, it's always been about drive lower emissions, move away from diesel, and that's pretty much been since when I started in 2016. So we launched a new, I suppose, a brand promise, which was built for a better world, and it was all about making a difference in Irish society and bringing down emissions. So the messaging has changed, I suppose, in the last couple of years, in that apart from being completely focused on hybrid, now we're looking at plug-in and electric, and we have more options for people. But for our own messaging, I suppose it has been very consistent, I would say, for the last decade. Sounds like a very long time, but yes, decade.
It flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
I know it's like asking someone, what's their favorite child, but of the current range of Toyota models, if you were, there was a big bunch of keys on the wall, which one would you take to go to Kerry in?
I actually have been driving the CHR for so long now. I have to say the CHR. Every so often I change out and I go into a different car. So I was in the RAV4, which I absolutely loved, but I always go back to the CHR.
I know it's being discontinued in Ireland, but can I say the Highlander? I mean,
Yeah.
the Highlander was basically, it was a Lexus with a Toyota badge on it, which is kind of the same thing anyway.
Yeah.
But like air-cooled seats, grey leather interior, beautiful, beautiful car.
Yeah, it's lovely. I'm not going to mention that comment back to Ian, though.
Say nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. We must get him on the podcast, actually, sometime if he's around.
And are we going to see, I know you can't give away too many secrets, are we going to see a return to cars like the Celica and the MR2, which Irish buyers in particular really loved? Are we going to see, do you think we might see a return to those sorts of cars in the future?
Your guess is as good as mine. I will say, though, Akio Toyota, he's been very vocal about his love of driving and performance driving and things like that. It's very close to his heart. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, he allowed the RSGR happen. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, the RSGR is incredibly special. And but do you know what? It's a car. I don't know. You're certainly too young to remember. Is the Toyota A86, the Corolla GT, which is the rear wheel drive rally car, which Ireland has a huge proportion of because they all ended up in places like Monaghan and Cavan.
Cross Donegal,
Yeah.
those kind of places. Yeah, I'm sure you have seen them, because obviously have a second and third. It's a Toyota, maybe a 10th life in them. So they seem to have been acquired by gentlemen of a certain description over boy racers over the last few years. Well, Zoe, look, here's to another 10 years in Toyota. Here's to another top 5 in the top 10 for the next little while. I don't see that changing, especially with so many new models coming down the line. So continued success, and thank you for having a chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was great. Thanks, guys.
Welcome back to the Drivers Republic podcast, brought to you in association with Dundeel Motors, with Ireland's widest selection of cars for sale from certified trusted dealers. The right car for you is on dundeel.ie. And a big thanks to Zoe Bradley from Toyota for joining us on this week's episode. Don't forget, you can email us at any time if you've got a question or you'd like something brought up to do with motoring or any sort of mobility here in Ireland and beyond. DriversRepublicPodcast@gmail.com is the email address. Our final interview on this week's episode is with a very interesting guy who's worked for a long time in the Renault Group here in Ireland, and we headed along to a pop-up store in Dundrum Town Centre this week to have a chat with him. I'm here with Jeremy Warnock, who is, he's listened to one episode of the podcast. I know.
Listen to a few now. Yeah.
But no pressure. Because as we've alluded to before, Jeremy's the real deal. He works in Renault Ireland, but he has an interesting car collection himself, but also is the guy Renault go to when, I suppose, they want to explain what a new car is to a room full of journalists or dealers or customers or whoever. Are you the guy who's kind of wheeled out for every occasion?
Well, I am the product and distribution manager. So when it comes to talking about product, I am the guy. So yeah, when there's an audience that needs to hear something about our new cars, I tend to tell them about it.
And when you are researching, as we often do about new cars, where do you do that? Is it just through a combination of in the office, or do you like to kind of just go somewhere quiet? Or do you need to even do that anymore?
Well, there's a combination of things. Obviously, when it comes to learning about our own cars, Renault have a fantastic training team, and they set up training events, and they're able to tell us everything about our cars, and it's fairly easily absorbed. They tend to give us a good bit of relevant information on competitor products as well. So, if you're not into cars and you're in a training position, it's easy to get all the information. Myself, I tend to just absorb any information I can about cars anywhere. I spend a lot of time on the internet reading about cars and specifying my own cars on configurators and browsing done deal.
Interesting. Well, we often say how joyful it can be of an evening just to look what's in the vintage section. And I presume that makes life easier for you. Like anything, when you enjoy what you do as a job, it makes the job easier.
I've been into cars since I was maybe 4 or 5. So for me, I've never worked in any other industry because it's the industry I wanted to work in. And I was very fortunate that coming straight out of college, I was able to get a job with an importer in the UK. And I haven't looked back. I've been in the industry ever since.
Impressive. We're recording today in Renault's pop-up store in Dundrum Town Centre, which is a nice idea. I don't know if too many car brands have done this format. So essentially, if you're browsing in Dundrum, you might be looking at the window of mannequins and then suddenly you see a car. Has this been a good way to launch a car, do you think?
It has actually, yeah. I mean, it's, I suppose, something that Renault themselves have been very keen on. Anyone who knows the brand at all, I guess, knows about the showroom on the Champs-Élysées. But even since then, they've promoted Renault 5 with pop-up stores in Paris. We're the first kind of smaller importer country to launch one of these pop-up stores. And it's been great for us. I mean, Dundrum Town Centre, the footfall is fantastic. You're in the target audience area for new car buyers. And it's great to be able to engage with people who wouldn't necessarily be shopping for cars at the moment. They quite possibly wouldn't have been considering Renault, but you get a chance to be in front of them. We have very knowledgeable people operating the store. Brian Kellett, who works on my team, is here 4 days a week, and he knows it inside out, so he's really well able to talk to customers. So it's been good from that point of view.
It's obviously a very vibrant car when you walk by, like you can't miss it. You mentioned in your presentation earlier on that a lot, like you're getting customers in here who maybe like they're not necessarily buying, or they didn't think they were buying or looking for a car, and equally who mightn't have a huge knowledge of EVs. And you said some of those questions are then fed back to you in Renault HQ in Ireland. What sort of normal people, if that's the way to describe them, questions are people asking about EVs?
I suppose it's probably simpler questions than you might necessarily expect. I mean, at the start when EVs first came out, I think one of the truisms was that if you were a salesperson in a dealership, the customers coming into you back in 2014, 2015 would know more about the cars than you did.
Yeah.
These days, you tend to get people who might see the Renault 5, they might think it's great, they might say, but I heard it's electric, will that work for me? And it's really a question of a lot of people simply not knowing much about EVs and sometimes not even knowing the questions they need to ask. But people tend to want to know about range. They tend to want to know what it's like to charge the car at home and what they need to charge the car at home. And then people say, well, what happens if I have a long journey? And, fortunately, the guys who work in the store here are EV drivers themselves. They know inside out what it's like to live with an EV, so they're well able to reassure people. And I think hopefully convince a few people that maybe were accidental EV skeptics, that maybe it could work for them.
It's a car that we've obviously both driven, you more than me. How would you describe it for people who are a bit more into their cars? To me, it's a fun car to drive. It's got 150 brake horsepower and the bigger battery. It's front wheel drive. It can be a little bit lively to maybe describe it like that through the front wheels with all the torque. Do you think it's a car that you would kind of take out for a Sunday spin in the mountains or wherever?
Absolutely. And I had one for a weekend a little while ago. And took it to Bray Cars and Coffee, and I came home the scenic route. It's a really fun car to drive, as you say. I think what really stands out for me is the level of refinement it has. Its ride quality is very good. It's very quiet. And I know people say EVs are quiet, but what happens when you take out engine noise is all the other noises are highlighted. And the suspension noise, the tyre noise, the wind noise is very muted in the R5. So I find it a very refined car compared to other cars in the B segment. And then, it's a lot of fun to drive.
It's also 1,449 kilos. Is that the larger battery or the smaller battery?
That's the larger battery. So 1,449 is the max weight of the R5.
Which is pretty decent for any car weight. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think even when you go back a couple of generations, Renault Clios were 1,200 to 1,300 kilos, and that's without a battery.
Yeah.
So to be able to bring a car out with all the safety features the R5 has, as well as electric power, I think it's pretty impressive.
So there's 3 trims: Evolution, Techno, and Iconic. You have noticed, I don't know if a quirk is the right word, but if you want it in green, you can't get so you normally get the top spec gets these lovely bolstered retro-looking seats with a bit of yellow splashed on the 5-digit as well. But you're not sure if Renault will let you mix that with the green exterior.
I think the people in charge of design have decreed that green exterior and yellow interior don't mix, which it works for several soft drink brands we could mention.
Yes.
So I wouldn't have an issue with it. But that said, you've got a good spec on the Techno. You got similar seat design with a kind of denim fabric instead. So really nice looking interior as well. So I'd be prepared to forgo heated seats and drive the green one.
To have the green. The green does look striking. I mean, look, the yellow is amazing. I think the car I'm going to be driving in a few weeks in Ireland is white. It's a pearl colour.
Pearl white with a black roof,
which looks nice. And I love there's so much personalisation that you can get in the car, whether it's decals on the roof and that strip around the front. The baguette holder, does that come as standard or is that an option?
The baguette holder is an accessory.
Okay.
But it clips straight onto the centre tunnel, so you can transport your baguette without getting crumbs in the interior.
And look, people might laugh, but it is something when you buy a large baguette and you put it in the passenger seat, there's always a bit that's going to either hit off the seat, or if you have to brake, it's going to fall on the floor. So no need to.
It's a real solution to a real problem.
No need to chop the top of your baguette off anymore. All models will come with a heat pump.
Yeah.
Was that something that you had to fight with Renault over? Or?
No, that was a decision, and I think we've only had one car launched without a heat pump in the whole time we've done EVs, and I think we did see customers noting a difference between hot weather and cold weather performance. So I think the decision from there was to introduce the heat pump as standard on everything, and it just does keep that winter range consistent.
That's the way you described it today. So for people that maybe, what the hell is a heat pump? It uses some of the heat from warming up the battery essentially to heat the cabin of the car.
Pretty much.
Is that the most simple way to explain it?
It's technical stuff, and someone described it to me once as like a fridge, but in reverse. And if I knew how a fridge worked, that'd be great. It would help me, but I've no idea.
But and people sometimes do say, do you need a heat pump in Ireland? You reckon it's obviously in this car you don't have to pay extra for it, but it is something worthwhile.
It's worthwhile, yeah, because you don't get, majorly long periods of -10, -15 degrees, but really even when the temperatures get down to 5 degrees, 3 degrees, which they do pretty frequently, it makes a difference.
Okay. So look, it's a nice to have. So look, a very interesting car, 2 battery sizes, as we said. I did have on my notes what's Jeremy's favourite colour. We've established that it's green. With a denim interior. One last question, actually, that I was interested today. So a lot of EVs, as you described, they use regen for the initial part of braking and the friction brake, which most cars would have had in the past. And that can result in a kind of a spongy, a bit of just a not very connected brake pedal. It's a lot better in this because...
It's a lot better in this because we have a fully by-wire braking system. So basically, everything is apportioned by the ECU for braking. So you get a really consistent pedal feel. It almost sounds counterintuitive when there's no physical link between the pedal and the brakes. But what you do get as a result of this is, for any given level of brake pedal effort, you get the same level of slowing down, whether your battery's at 100% and you can't regen, or your battery's at 20%. So it's very consistent.
And again, helps with that driving feel. On a not really connected to Renault 5 specifically, but as we've alluded, you are a car fan. Do you think cars like this now, and maybe with the Alpine A290, which has been confirmed, will come to Ireland as well, might be January next year, but it is coming, are cars like this going to give a little bit of lease of life to the hot hatch? I know certain cars like the GTI still exist, but they're few and far between these days.
They're few and far between, and between VRT in Ireland and CAFE rules in Europe, manufacturers are shying away from cars with high CO2 emissions. And to be fair, that is that was the goal of the EU in introducing CAFE regulations. So the question is, can you have fun in cars that aren't powered by a petrol engine? I think definitely. I mean, talk about the Renault 5. It's not a hot hatch, but it's a car that's great fun to drive. I think when we test the Alpine A290, it's a very different character of vehicle, even though it's based on pretty much the same car as the Renault 5. It's got its own bespoke suspension, motor, cooling system specifically set up for a hot hatch. It's a great car to drive, and I think it's going to be the first of many. And
it's a different way of enjoying, in inverted commas, going fast or going around corners maybe, but it's still able to do it.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked about hearing about the A290 was that a lot of the testing they've done on the car has been on track, and they've done things like seeing how it stands up to repeated fast acceleration and hard braking, and made sure that the car remains very consistent in its performance, just whatever the state of charge of the battery.
We briefly mentioned the new turbo that was unveiled a couple of weeks ago. What are your top line thoughts on it? Is it a car we're going to see here?
I think we will see it here. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a couple of years away in real life. It's a very special car. It's going to be quite exclusive. Very exciting in terms of the technology and the driving experience that it's going to offer. And as to your question about whether we're going to have fun EV hot hatches, this is probably not a hot hatch. It's more of a supercar. Yeah. But it's very much focused on a driving experience with some drifting capability built in and that kind of thing. So I think it's a remarkable car.
It shows you what's possible.
Shows you what's possible, and I really think it points towards a bright future of exciting EVs.
Well, we're here at Renault 5 launch. Very exciting launch today. It's on sale in Ireland now from just under €26,000. Jeremy, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Mark.
Apparently, Google searches are at the highest about the Renault 5 since 1972 in an article this week. I'm just not sure Google were actually around in 1972, so not sure how that works. Anyway, that is about it for this week's episode on the Drivers Republic podcast. Next week, we'll be chatting about the new Cooper Tavascan, because that's one of the cars I'll be driving. We'll catch up with Paddy as well. And we'll have the Managing Director of Kia Ireland, Ronan Flood, on the pod. So see you next time. Thanks for listening.